Let me ask you guys a question. I'm going to throw this out to you. I'm going to tell you what mine is, because we're getting this question a lot about the best coaching job Coach Kelly has done and all these type of things. I'm going to give my three, and I'm going to go Reggie, Sean, and Malik. Malik will, because quarterbacks have to go last because that's still, with all due respect to the running back, still the best position in football. I'm a little biased. So for me, I still think 2012 was his best coaching job when you consider the talking about Reggie, talking about winning in the end. You got the Purdue game, the Michigan game, Stanford in overtime when Ev went down, Tommy coming off the bench, rallying that team. Then Ev goes down. They got to beat BYU without him. I mean, Oklahoma on the that was a great coaching job. And I think it gets marred because of how the season ended, that people forget just how good of a job that staff did. Number two for me is last year. Not just for the season, because, you could say, well, it didn't end well, but to everything that team had to weather through last year. Austin goes down. Lindsey goes down. I mean, there were some injuries you had to deal with. You had lost a bunch of dudes in the NFL, go through the pandemic, all that stuff. And then the third one for me is 2018. When you look at the talent they lost, I mean, they lost Q. And also in 2012, they lost Michael Floyd. They lost Harrison Smith. They lost Robert Blant, Darius Fleming. They lost a lot of guys. Same thing in 2018. They lost Josh Adams. They lost Quentin. They lost McGlinchey. They lost Niles. I mean, they lost a lot of players from that team. And then you go out that next year against a decent, one of the better schedules they faced in the last 4 years. And you beat Michigan in the beginning. You make the quarterback change. You run the table. You beat 4 ranked teams during the season. I think that was my third best job. Reggie, how would you kind of rank the top 3 jobs that Coach Kelly and this staff have done during their tenure here at Notre Dame?
I would say last year was the best one, just because I was privy to all the things that were going against them in terms of, the protocols that, again, they were not protocols that were instituted by the athletic department. These were and this is where, again, Notre Dame is a little different than where most athletic departments are kind of isolated and they kind of do their own thing. That doesn't happen in Notre Dame. Notre Dame has to, kind of walks hand to hand with what the university dictates. So a lot of the protocols and processes that were dictated to athletics, football had to abide by those. And for them to do that and do it and against at such a high level in the way they played and not really having that connectedness all year, and for them to come out and play as together as I've ever seen a team play. And again, that required the coaches to have constant communication with their athletes and having to communicate with multiple groups of athletes, seeing this one over here, just all the things that came into play, not because it was a pandemic, but more so of the things that were thrust upon them of requirements, and to have to do that, just the mental locked in. Because again, this is just me. I just don't think, this generation, the mental to stay keyed in on a consistent basis, it's just not there. I just don't see it. I mean, because you have to, college football is still a week in and week out game that you have to do well. And I don't see, and you didn't see a lot of mental lapses that could very well have derailed this team. And we talk about the period of time when they didn't play for a month because of outbreak, but how quickly they were able to get things back together and get back on track. That, that takes leadership, and it also takes coaching, because you have to coach football and coach through a pandemic at the same time. And believe me, and I said that's why the first chapter of the book is about the 2020 season. I'm still floored by what they were able to accomplish that this past year, and that's across the board.
You're up, Sean.
All right. Malik actually changed my mind.
Come on, stand strong in your convictions, Sean. Come on, man.
No, Brian, you have to admit when someone gives good information, that changes the perception of your thoughts and what you thought about a situation. I actually thought 2015 was a great coaching job, especially the way Malik went down against Virginia, being able to come back.
I can't include any coaching job that was involved with Brian Van Gorder as a great coaching job. I'm sorry.
That's why
I put it in there though.
I stopped short.
Okay.
Once,
I gotta say this. That was I've never seen a defense coordinator with that clueless in my life. I didn't at least know that because
harsh, guys, that's harsh.
I'm sorry.
It's true.
I mean, just watch it. Literally, if Joe Schmidt was not on the field, they couldn't get lined up. Malik, they literally could not get lined up.
We knew our problems. Our problems in 2015 defense was man defense, and we were out of position on our pass coverages.
Why?
Because they couldn't get lined up from the start. The defense was so freaking complicated.
We had guys in there that shouldn't have been in there.
Whose decision was that?
Because he again, this goes. You know that. This is one I said. This is my system. You have to fit my system. I know for a fact guys could not get lined up if Joe Schmidt wasn't telling them where to go. And Joe will tell you he wasn't the most athletic guy. And like I go back to that Stanford game. Why are we playing man? And that is not his strong suit. And he'll tell you that. The Stanford tight ends are running by my man.
Listen,
but if he doesn't play, if he's not at the middle of that defense,
he has 0 tackles.
Yeah, your Mike linebacker had 0 tackles against Clemson. And hey, Joe wasn't putting himself in the game. No. Van Gorder wasn't like, hey, Niles, get in there. And Joe's like, no, I'm playing. Sit down, Niles. Right? I mean,
they literally could not get lined up if he was. And I can remember him looking back. He'd get the front 7 lined up, and he had to turn around to the safeties and get them where they're supposed to go.
And North Carolina exposed that because they were snapping the ball. Dudes were like looking around, and North Carolina snapping and throwing out. You had Romeo Okwara dropping into coverage against Stanford with 30 seconds left in the game. Malik, come on, man.
Okay, but think about it. It was what? It was 3rd and 16. It was like a huge.
Who's Romeo covering with 5 seconds left in the game?
They
sacked the quarterback.
And it was so wide open. I hated it. It was like slow motion. It was like right in front of this.
Malik.
It was terrible.
He was so bad. He's the only. He kept Jalen Smith never had 10 tackles for loss in the season.
He didn't.
Jalen Smith.
It was too much.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna leave it alone. When you have a defense, when the actual gap moves with motion, that's not good.
No. Not good. You got to do an 11-man audible when they just do a slot motion, man. Come on now.
All they got to do, and the whole defense changes. That's not a good look. That doesn't bode well for everybody. It just doesn't.
Malik, I respect the fact that because it would be easy for Malik, who was on that team, to blame coaches, and he's not going to do that, and I appreciate that. But we weren't a part of that team, and so we can speak the truth. That was bad.
Players got to play, coaches got to coach.
Yeah, and the coaches didn't coach on defense. So I cannot stand to have anything associated with a Brian Van Gorder coach team as anything being a well-coached team.
But if
you put Mike Elko on that 2015 team, Notre Dame's playing for a championship that year.
Whole different game.
Let's just be objective. That year, Van Gorder did put us in position where we only lost games totaled by 4 points. He held up Christian McCaffrey.
He didn't hold Christian McCaffrey to nothing. What? All right? You gave up 38 points. You gave up 38 points. You gave up 38 points.
Their tight ends were huge.
Throw the ball all over the yard. So it's like, hey, well, Christian, we don't have to work. You can take this game off because we can toss this ball all over the yard.
Yeah.
They did that though. They definitely did.
Yeah, I mean, y'all scored on offense with 30 seconds left in the game.
Oh man, y'all got to work. If there's any time left on the clock, if there's any time left on the clock, you sweating.
Right.
You can. Like I said, I'll put that offense up against anybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But that defense. It's like literally, you let's hold the ball so we don't give them a chance to get the ball. Because we give another team any time offensively, it's not going to go well. And it didn't.
You had pros all over.
And I know you got to protect your squad. I feel you.
Front seven.
Look, you had 2 first-round picks on the offensive line, a second-round. I'm sorry, 3 first-round picks on that offensive line, a second-round pick. Elmer would have been picked. First-round pick at receiver. Amir Carlisle was the slow receiver on that team. Okay, you had Josh Adams. You had Dex Williams backing up CJ. You had
backing him up. Come on,
Jalen Smith, Max Redfield, 4 NFL dudes on the defensive line. You had Kavari Russell, Cole Luke, Matthias Farley started in the NFL. He couldn't even start on that team.
He couldn't even
start on that team.
He couldn't even start on. Yeah.
He started He started more games for the Colts than he did for Notre Dame in 2015.
Yeah, for sure. But you got
you beat one ranked. They beat one ranked team that year. One ranked team. It was Navy.
It was Navy. Yeah.
Navy, right? Y'all won because of the talent, not because of the coaching. You won in spite of the coaching. It's like Kyron Williams went 91 yards in spite of the offensive line against North Carolina. Right? It was the same thing, and it just, to waste that much. Think if you put, I'll say this to the day that I die. You put the 2017 defensive coaching staff on the 2015 roster, and that team plays for the title.
Elko had it.
Yeah, no doubt. Because again, you look at Elko as like see ball, get ball.
Right.
Gee, I think Jalen Smith might have done okay in that defense.
Maybe he might have been all right. He may have done. And to be honest with you, and again, I think you would have had enough. Your Mike linebacker would not have been Joe Schmidt.
No.
Right. No. And if he was, he would have put him in better positions to hide what he wasn't good at. But I agree. Even if you didn't want to play Niles in 2015 because he was young, then play Greer. Play somebody.
But he couldn't get lined up. Literally, Joe was getting everybody lined up.
Yeah.
And again, too much. You know how you get so much talent that you like, oh, we can do so many different things, but we wasn't simple. Mm-hmm. And that's what slowed us down. But look,
you can't think of if you're playing defense and you're thinking, you're done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You just got to go out and react. And that's what I love about Elko. And the defensive coordinators we have now, they're not asking guys to, put a formula together to run a play. It's okay. Hey, you see the ball, go be instinctual.
Malik, this is a dude that dropped Jerron Jones and Jay Hayes in a zone fire on 3rd down against Michigan State.
Look, it was getting too much where, when it comes down to guys got to want to play for the coach.
I love Malik going to war right now for his team, man. I love it. He dropped Jerron Jones and Jay Hayes in a zone fire in the 4th quarter on 3rd down against Michigan State. And if y'all don't remember, that pass was completed, obviously, and Michigan State held on to win.
But we just, I think we're more complicated now with Marcus Freeman than we were in 2015.
They look more complicated. They're not actually more complicated.
They're probably more fundamental as well.
They want to play for Marcus Freeman. They want to do well, and they're at a young enough age to where they're learning without bad habits. We had a bunch of old dudes with a new defensive coordinator who was old himself. He wasn't bending. They wasn't bending.
He was in year 2, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
The dude gave up 40 plus to a Northwestern team that hadn't scored 30 all year.
Okay, Trevor Simeon's nice though.
But he wasn't nice against anyone else that year.
He wasn't nice against anybody else. But everybody plays us like Tom Brady.
It was Northwestern.
Brian,
he was out there that night.
He's lying right now.
He
doesn't believe that about Trevor Simeon.
Trevor
Simeon is trash.
Trevor Simeon that night at Notre Dame Stadium was Peyton Manning.
Yes, it just like Tate Forcier was nasty in 2009 against Notre Dame, but it was because of John Tenuta, not because Tate Forcier was any good.
Passes. Northwestern dropped like 3 wide open touchdown. Trevor Simeon was nice that game. I don't know what it was.
Malik.
That game was good.
Malik.
When people are wide open, it's kind of hard not to throw the ball to them when they're just wide open. It's you know when you're basically playing 7-on-7 and maybe more like 7-on-5. You can make somebody look really good.
I'm going to read out some numbers, Malik, and you tell me which one was the Notre Dame game, okay? This is offensive yards. 354, 394, 283, 361, 385, 393, 290, 180, 264, 547. That's how much Notre Dame gave up to Northwestern that day, and that's all the yards they gave up. Iowa held them to $180. Western Illinois held that nasty Trevor Siemian offense to 283 yards. They lost to Northern Illinois. They scored 24 points against Western Illinois, and they hung a 43 spot on Van Gorder.
Brian, don't fall for this.
You gotta wanna play for your coach, man.
This man.
Well, exactly. It wasn't a good coaching job. Exactly my point.
He's one of the harshest critics on the quarterback position.
So what you're saying is the Lucky Lefty podcast, Candid Irish Breakdown podcast, sabotaging, right? You're trying to throw some stuff out that you don't believe in to try to bring this level down. Okay.
There's no way he was standing on the sideline saying this dude Trevor Siemian is no way. No way.
Not at that time. No, I was definitely upset because I just couldn't. I was saying the same thing. Why are we dropping Romeo out and he should be rushing the pass?
Right.
Yeah, so we had a conversation.
Right. Yes, why is he playing Mike? And the thing about Joe that makes me feel bad is if we'd have seen the 2014 pre-Navy injury version of Joe in 2015, I feel like we'd have seen something a little different.
Yeah,
because he wasn't a kid that could afford to lose a step. He couldn't afford to lose a step, and that was a devastating knee injury late in the year. He was never the same kid, and because the sad thing is that most fans remember the 2015 Joe, and they forget that Joe was a pretty good player before the knee injury.
Yeah, for sure. Joe was not bad until he started getting injured.
Right, and he
actually when you leg injuries. Now, and Brian, you were spot on. That's exactly what I said. I was like, after his injury, he was, he was already slow, and he'll tell you he was already slow. And then you get injured, and you reduce And I've talked to Joe, and Joe, as like I said, he and I still keep in touch, and he'll tell you he was like, yeah, we couldn't get lined up. If when him there, we couldn't get lined up.
Right,
too much going on.
So it's like, what are you gonna do?
So Brian, look,
they lost to Reggie Bonifant, Malik. Reggie Bonifant, a quarterback.
He looked like Lamar before Lamar.
21. He went 8-21.
He was good. Yeah, he was good.
They moved him to receiver. Malik, come on, man.
Say that.
Yeah,
they lost to Reggie
and he's Bonifant with a straight face right now.
Well, 2014 way different than 2015. 2014 was tough because nobody wanted to do what we was doing at that point, and it was showing because it was already frustrating offensively, and then defense would be on the field for about 50 plays at a time. And we were frustrated because we had the talent to win. We would look around and be like, we got the guys, and we out here, Trevor Siemian's going crazy. We out here, Reggie Bonifant's going crazy. We out here losing game after game, but it was really because I don't think we took the coaching adjustments like we started taking after that season. Like, we stopped letting the turnovers be a big thing. We was like, we're not doing turnovers. We started being more simple on defense, and then our players got older too. That 14 transition to 15 was when everybody got that next year. Everybody was primed and in their top peak moment at Notre Dame at that time, and we started clicking after that.
I think we also saw a bit of a philosophical shift from Brian Kelly in 2015, and that was the first time I really felt like he committed to being we are going to beat your what's in the trenches on offense.
Yeah, we had.
And he had the team to do it. But I think, like, you look at that team and it just had such a different mentality up front. That's when you finally saw the Harry Hiestand effect, to me, take full impact. Is look,
that's the best
thing. Who the quarterback is. I don't care who you put at running back. Right. We're
The
going to beat
best
your
thing
tails
that
up.
ever happened to Coach Brian Kelly at Notre Dame was Coach Harry Easton to this day, and even people are upset about the offensive line right now because Harry Easton has such an impact in the years that he was there. He's the reason why it cultivated a whole. We can win every game because we could just stay behind those trenches.
I love Josh Adams. This is not a shot on Josh, but could you imagine this backfield behind the 2017 offensive line? Or
But think about this though, and this is something because you
Kyron
look at
crazy.
this is the thing you got to think about is that I'm glad that Brian Kelly, and this is another improvement on his point. He stopped with the one back, ride that one back.
Yeah.
That's huge because you think about it. Like I said, I always felt Josh would have done better had
They got
he had they spelled him with CJ and giving him more care.
Right.
Yeah.
They got CJ hurt doing that. They got Josh hurt doing that.
It's why Josh wore down in 2017. If you look at, like, to me, I still say the best stretch of football we saw from Josh from making reads and decisiveness was when he took over for CJ. And when I've had this, Reggie, to your point, I've had this conversation about they needed to play more backs. And people say, well, look at 2015, look at the numbers that him and Josh and CJ both ran for over 800. I said, but no. Josh's yards didn't come till after CJ got hurt.
It didn't come to
ran
CJ into the ground,
right?
And then Josh got in, and then we ran him to the ground. But we had all these guys, and Dex was great when he was taking a lot of the care.
Right.
So I was like,
and they always slept on Tony Jones, in my opinion. He should have played a bigger role too.
Slept on but Tony Jones was just like Ian Book. They end up being two of the most productive running back quarterback combos in the era. Because they were slept on, and then they just got in, and then they had that wave of 16, 17, 18. And now you look at them like that. Tony Jones got 30 games. Ian got 30 games put in. Mm-hmm. But
because Autry Denson was the running back coach, and Autry he wanted to do it, but wasn't allowed.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Because again, that's Autry came out of that he was the guy. Mm-hmm. When he was at Notre Dame, he was all-time leading rusher, but he's like, man, I probably would have had a longer opportunity to play at the next level if I just didn't. Just ran me constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But him switching up with Kyron and Logan and Chris Tyree is the best evolution of the running back position that we've seen because it's kept Kyron healthy, it's got Diggs confidence and you see him splash plays. And Chris Tyree is a better evolved form of CJ Sanders.
I wonder, however,
the right way.
I wonder how much of that is because that's not what they did early in the season.
No,
early in the season it was Kyron and a little bit of Chris. Logan Diggs didn't play a snap till Chris got hurt. Now we're seeing it. I wonder how much of that influence is coming from Tommy and Lance trying to force that argument that we've got to because you don't have Avery, because Joe Wilkins is hurt. You're almost forced to. And I'm hoping that if that is the case, and I could be wrong, it's been a decision that they made. But if it is something that was forced upon them, or they made it because of the injuries, that they look at and say, hey, you know what, this is a formula that works. And you're going to lose Kyron next year, but you're going to have Audric Estime. Jadarian Price is going to show up. And if y'all haven't seen Jadarian Price play as a senior, watch him. Yeah. He is the next one.
I also look at, like I said, the evolution with the receivers. Because like I said, this is the most I don't think we've ever had. And again, I think it's out of necessity, which is fine. But you got to play these younger guys in legit spots. It can't just be mop up duty. These guys need to see legit action, and you need to trust them to give them just a little bit, whatever that is. Give them those opportunities like you're doing with the quarterback position. Hey, you have to say Buckner. Buckner ain't played in 2 years, but you've seen his growth as he's gotten those opportunities. And to be honest with you, Jack Cohn hadn't played in a year because he was injured before he came. He transferred in, and you see these guys develop and get better. And like I said, I'm a Tommy Rees fan from the standpoint of he has a perspective of the ability to communicate with quarterbacks. because he knows, and I'm not a big fan of, like I said, of cussing out quarterbacks, because I just don't think that's, talk to people like an adult. And I don't think, again, that was not always the case in how the quarterbacks were talked to, for over BK's, early part of his time at Notre Dame. And I've seen his involvement as a head coach. He's been able to relinquish a lot of the duties where, he took over take over offense. And again, that control factor, that's huge with coaches to see. And that's what I see his evolution as becoming a head coach. Because that's why you look at, everyone talks about Nick Saban. Nick Saban, you look at his coaching tree, it's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because he invests that time in the coaches. But again, he's still in control, but he doesn't have to flex because it's just known. And I think, BK has learned that, you don't have to flex. You're the head coach. You need to coach up the coaches without, feeling like, hey, people are, everybody's looking at you, but you got the big boy pants on because you're making the big boy money. Hey, bring it on and just keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank Truman Dumel for the big super sticker. Truman, I appreciate that. And also Tom Ryan coming through with a super chat. I want to update everybody real quick. We're still tabulating the numbers, but I can say this confidently as we wrap up the show. We have raised over $5,000 today. And that is huge. So you all came through big time. Everybody in IB Nation came through big time. I'm actually like kind of freaking out right now about how I'm going to spend all this money, because I don't know if I have enough on my list. So I'm going to have to make some additional phone calls. So Reggie, I may have to pick your brain a little bit about some other places I can call in the area, because I know you've worked with these people before. But I want to thank everybody for coming through so much today. And I'm going to tell you, this is about as much fun as I've had doing a podcast as I've had. So I don't know if we can, we may have to just shut this thing down the rest of the week, because I don't know if we can live up to the show that we did today. But Malik, thank you so much for joining us today. Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. Reggie, thank you so much for joining us today. Oscar McBride was on the show. Last time me, Reggie, and Oscar had some conversations. We shared some stories I wish we could share on this podcast about Coach Holtz. I love having that. So Reggie, thank you again so much. Malik, thank you again so much. I want to thank everybody that was with us today. We had great numbers in the show today, and the fact that we raised over $5,000, that you all gave over $5,000 of your money to help people in this area that need it. As I said, every single penny is going to go to the items that these groups have told us they need: food, clothes, supplies to help people in need. And I can't thank you all enough. It just shows what a tremendous Irish Breakdown and Notre Dame community that we have. So thank you all so much. So fellas, any last words before we head out of here? We're gonna have to do this again. This was a lot of fun. I can't believe Malik was trying to go to bat for Brian Van Gordon. I'm appalled. I almost was like, hey, I don't know what happened to Malik's connection. We don't know where Malik went. So I mean, oh man.
Listen, I'm always saying that because listen, you got to look objectively. We were really good in that.
Yes.
With what happened and with what was going on, we were able to find ways to win, more so with the situation we was dealing with internally. We knew that we were struggling to put together schemes to stay consistent, but that's where the coaches got to coach and the players got to play. And we said it didn't matter. We're going to find a way to win.
Right.
As compared to this year, we're better than every team we're playing until we play the teams that matter. So
okay, I gotta ask: does your relationship with Gummy have anything to do with your defense?
No. I just asked.
I'm just like, and I said I'm a Gummy fan. I said, and again, I can only imagine how difficult it is to have your pops, and he probably knew too. I mean, he probably knew too. Let's be honest, he probably knew too. But I'm just throwing it out there.
Gummy knew. Gummy was just like, listen, you just gotta roll with the punches. We're gonna get better as time goes on, but. That Texas game, giving up 50 points when we went and played Texas that next year was just so crazy. It was just it's something you just can't overcome.
Hey, bro, I'm sorry for putting you on the tee like that for Brian and Reggie, man. I didn't. I didn't mean to set you up like that.
Sean, we actually never heard from you. Know what? We didn't hear from either one of you guys about your top 3 coaching jobs. When you said 2015, I lost it. My bad. I derailed it. Sean, I'm sorry, man. What's your top 3 coaching jobs? And if you top 3 coaching jobs, Sean and Malik, I apologize.
Go ahead. Look, I agree with you. I think 2020, 2012. I'll go a step further. I think a lot of people forget what happened in that 2010 season and the win at the end of the season at USC and how that kind of set up going into that 2011, 2012 season. I think that was like the Robert Hughes game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they went out USC, there, slowed the game down, and Brian Kelly kind of like went away from like wanting to come in and be pass happy and just said, look, in order for us to win this game against USC, this is the way we're going to have to do it. And
that's when Rob put that imprint right on Chris Calippo's forehead, if y'all remember that one.
Right. So I think that's an underrated coaching job in that season because I think that kind of propelled going into the national championship season. And then, of course, 2018 and 2020, for me. And the reason I stepped away from 2015, which would have been on my list, is because of what he said about how that locker room and the leadership already existed. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I'm not saying you didn't need coaching.
Just don't screw it up.
We definitely didn't need coaching 15.
The coaching's job was don't F this up.
Exactly. Yeah. Just don't mess it up. Because we could run.
I mean, think about all that talent that was on that team. It's sickening. Literally, just the offensive line, you're talking about 4 All-Pros. Not
3 Hall of Famers.
Think about that. 4 All-Pros from one offensive line, all together, all pro. Are you kidding me?
And Brian, the one thing Malik and I talk about, what he talks about, I don't know if people remember, they got blown out at USC in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Blown out with talent. Like some of the same guys were there in 2014, but Malik.
Yeah, but that team was so beat up by the time they got to USC, though.
That's true.
And they had Jacob Matuska playing D tackle. You know what I mean? Like,
I remember that. Because he was like 240s, maybe.
Yeah, he was like still making the transition from tight end in high school. Yeah, they were down big time.
And most people point to that LSU bowl game, but Malik talks about that fourth quarter for him against USC when he was able to put together a couple of touchdown drives, kind of gain confidence with the other young guys, and how that kind of let them see, like, you know what, we can do this thing. And it just rolled in.
CJ was playing running back.
Yeah.
Things were coming together. LSU was in trouble after that fourth quarter because we really hit our stride in the losses.
Well, then you had like that great run by CJ in the fourth quarter, and what often gets overlooked in that play is the block that Torian had on that jet sweep. He had a great cut block on the edge on that jet. He did so much dirty work in that game. Like that's why I still would have loved to have seen him and CJ as a 1-2 punch in 2015 would have been really fun.
The way we was running backs, we probably would have never saw CJ. So that was probably the best thing that happened for CJ because one season he got drafted third round.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Because what do you have, like 20-some catches for 500 yards as a slot the year before? Never played defense. All right, Malik, you got to give your 3. And if you say 2015, I swear to God.
My number 1 is 2012. I think that was like a movie. You couldn't have scripted anything better than that. I fell in love with the school watching that season develop. I remember committing after we won that crazy Purdue game at home when it was just so dramatic. So that whole season, I thought 2012 was the best coaching job because it took a lot to be able at that time to work a 2-quarterback system. You had just situational football. That was Coach Kelly's best year because 1 or 2 differences in the game could have changed the whole season. So every game was a must win, and you got to give it up to that. I really like my second year. Obviously, is the COVID year. I think that put the program to the test on how well built is your program and the system, and how well built is the culture and the leadership. And for us to do so well and make the playoffs in a situation like that, to me, proved that that's solidifies us as a top 5 football program of all time. Because even when something like a pandemic hits you, us to have so much of a good foundation and rock out throughout the season and still win the games that we need to win and not look affected, even though there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Got to give that up to coaching. And then the last one will probably be the undefeated season. What was that, 2018?
18, yeah.
I think that's impressive due to the fact that, it's hard to go undefeated. I remember when I was at school looking at only the one team to do that, and they were so celebrated, still celebrated in the locker room and throughout the building. So to go undefeated, man, that's something that's pretty special. I think they were clicking on all cylinders, and it was good to see us cross that path of, okay, we're better than just a team that's good every now and again. We're a team that can put it all together, go out with a bang, and then now we just got to take that next step to be a juggernaut in a playoff situation.
I think for me, that's the thing that Brian Kelly has done is we can have these conversations about what he needs to do to win a championship. Because when Brian Kelly arrived in 2010, there was no championship conversation other than you have to say it at your opening press conference. You can't not say it when you got to Notre Dame. But they didn't have the facilities. They didn't have the recruiting base. They didn't have the reputation, the coaching. I mean, everything at Notre Dame in 2010 was that of a tier 3 team.
That's right.
And now we can say, hey, we got to hold Coach Kelly accountable for not winning the title, but it's because of the work that he's done in the first 11 years. And I think you can't be a title team, in my opinion, and a consistent winner. Because, I don't want Notre Dame to be LSU, per se, where you have that one great year and then everything else around it kind of sucks.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
It's – and some people may say, hey, give me the title and the rest is garbage. But I think to be a true program, it's you got to first establish that level of consistency that we've seen, where you can have a turnover in leadership and then just naturally new leaders arrive. Because like Reggie talked about earlier, it's because those guys are learning from the last group of leaders, and I think that's kind of where you have created a culture that's gotten you here. I think now let's figure out a way to get you here. And I think that's one area where we're bringing in Marcus Freeman has been so important, because part of it is, for all we want to talk about this scheme change and this, that, and the other, you still have to keep getting better and better players.
And maybe that's what it is too. Coach
Right.
Kelly's best thing for Notre Dame is that he's raised the bar from being great to we're only looking for championships.
Right.
And that's a short way of putting it, but that's super impactful to think of changing the whole perception of it's not even good enough to beat our rivals anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's damn near not good enough to go undefeated. We are only looking for Hall of Fame offensive linemen, because we complain so much about the offensive linemen now, and championships. And that's the highest you can put a program when it's on that level, because only 2 programs exist like that right now, and that's Ohio State and Alabama. We're in that conversation now, but obviously we're missing a few pieces, but that's just the expectation outside looking in.
Yeah.
Yo, you just throwing Clemson out of the bag like that?
Right. One bad year and Malik just trashes Clemson.
Clemson is only dependent on a quarterback.
Well, they had 2 great ones, though.
Yeah, but if they can't be
So you just throwing EJ out to the trash like that,
if they can't even be ranked after losing one guy, I can't give you no credit for that. Now, you look at Alabama, it didn't even matter for the longest who their quarterback was. They was going to win, right? They McElroy, whatever, McCarron, okay, but it didn't matter. With Clemson, it mattered the whole way, and it even proved it when we played DJ at Notre Dame. There was 2 different Clemson teams in 2020. There was the Clemson we played at Notre Dame, and then there was the Clemson Tigers we played in the playoffs. And the only difference was the quarterback. So I can't give their program the benefit of the doubt, say, they're just a juggernaut, because they had the quarterback that was such the difference maker. That's what Oklahoma's problem is.
2. Where I'd push back a little bit, Malik, is if they struggle again next year, I'll agree with you, because Clemson actually started turning the corner with Taj Boyd. Remember, they beat Ohio State in the Orange Bowl after 2013, beat LSU the next year. Remember, that's the year Deshaun was actually taking over as a freshman, got hurt. And I can't remember the kid they put in, Staub. I think Staub is the kid. He was a kid from Ohio. You know what I'm talking about, right? Cole Stout or whatever. Then they rallied back, had a couple battles, but they rallied back and beat LSU, or was it Oklahoma? They beat Oklahoma in a bowl game that year, because they beat LSU after 2012, I believe. No, They beat LSU somewhere in there with Taj. They beat Ohio State in there with Taj, and beat Oklahoma in there with Taj. And then 2015, Deshaun as a sophomore steps up and gets it done. But like in the game against Notre Dame, though, I mean, Deshaun threw for like 92 yards that game.
Yeah, like,
those Clemson teams had some great players all around. I've seen this fall off coming. We talked about it this summer because they were so much more dependent upon Trevor in 2020 than they were of Trevor in 2018 or even Deshaun in 2016. Because there were some games where Deshaun just was like, dude, you turned it over 3-4 times, right? But like it didn't matter because that defense was so good.
Right.
So I think that's the thing is
there's the thing. Defense.
Right.
This defense has had a precipitous decline over the last 2 or 3 years that's been like, whoa, this is not the normal Clemson. And again, I'm an offensive player, but the age-old adage still holds true. Defenses win championships, period. I mean, the game can be modified and move, but if you don't have those dudes on defense, you can't even talk championship anymore.
Right. What I would say, what I've said, Reggie, and I want to get your thoughts on this. What I have said is I don't think the defense wins championships is true anymore from this standpoint. What I've said is defense will get you to the show. If you don't have a great defense, you are not playing for a title. Oklahoma. But what we've seen in modern day, Oklahoma is a great example. What we've seen in modern time, however, is once you get to that big stage, you got to score. Because you just can't stop these teams. And we're seeing it Ohio State scores 40 and they beat Oklahoma. I mean, Clemson hung 40 on Alabama in a loss in 2015. They scored 34 in the next year.
You almost can't even give a team credit that makes it to a championship that doesn't have a great defense.
Right. That's why Oklahoma's been one and done all the time. But that's also why Notre Dame's been one and done, because Notre Dame has had multiple championship caliber defenses under Clark Lee, but they didn't have the offense.
Yeah. But we had the pieces. We didn't have the.
Don't even get me started on a 2018 team right now. Throw the post, and it's 7-0.
Okay.